Masters of Horror is an anthology television series created by director Mick Garris for the Showtime cable network. In 2002, Mick Garris invited some director friends to an informal dinner. The original 10 masters attending were John Carpenter, Larry Cohen, Don Coscarelli, Joe Dante, Guillermo del Toro, Stuart Gordon, Tobe Hooper, John Landis, Bill Malone, and Garris himself. Eventually, Garris would organize regular dinners with the group and invite other horror and other genre directors to attend. Many well-known directors attended these dinners, including such names as Dario Argento, Eli Roth, and Wes Craven, just to name a few. In 2005, Garris created and produced the original anthology television series of one-hour movies, written and directed by many of the masters. The series debuted to excellent reviews in the US with the premiere episode Incident on and Off a Mountain Road, co-written and directed by Don Coscarelli. The show ran for 2 seasons with 13 episodes per season. Today, I'll be reviewing Season 1, which includes the episode named Imprint. This episode was shelved by Showtime over concerns about its graphic and disturbing content. It was later released to DVD and is currently available on streaming services. So let's take a look at all 13 episodes. Episode 1, Incident on and Off a Mountain Road. Starring Bree Turner, Angus Scrimm, John DeSantis, and Heather Feeney, and directed by Don Coscarelli. While driving at night along a lonely road through the mountains, Ellen gets distracted by her radio and hits a car parked on the road. She faints and looks for help since her car doesn't start again. She meets Moonface pulling a woman in the woods. He's a deranged monster-like man that collects human bodies. She's abducted by Moonface, but she recalls the survival lessons of her husband Bruce as she faces and fights back against the killer. I really like this episode and how it is presented in 2 timelines. One showing Ellen's confrontation with Moonface, and the other showing the development of her relationship with Bruce. Each timeline also has its own color palette, which I thought was an interesting choice. Bruce is a terrible, controlling, abusive spouse, but he did teach her survival skills, and she really uses them against Moonface. I think it was great that we understood how Ellen knows how to fight back, and I couldn't wait to see what she did next. I also enjoyed the extra twist at the end. Revenge fans will love this one. Episode 2, Dreams in the Witch House. Starring Ezra Godden, Jay Brazeau, and Shayla Horsdal, was directed by Stuart Gordon. A graduate student questions his sanity after he rents a room in an old boarding house which was the residence of a 17th century witch, and he figures out that the evil forces still roam within the walls. This is not a particularly scary episode, but an interesting one with a good mix of characters. The grad student, the mean landlord, the single mom that the student has a thing for, and the old man who knows a lot about the witch and the house. I think all of the actors did a pretty good job. This is a fun mystery thriller with some twists and turns and a surprise at the end. Have some fun with this one. I got a kick out of the rat with a woman's face. Episode 3, Dance of the Dead. Starring Jessica Lowndes, Robert Englund, and Jonathan Tucker, was directed by Tobe Hooper. In a post-apocalyptic society, 17-year-old Peggy lives with her mom, who's become overprotective since her young daughter, Anna, died. Peggy works at her mom's restaurant. When 2 punk couples come into the diner to eat, Peggy's attracted to Jack, who invites her to go out with him later. Without letting her mom know, Peggy goes out with Jack, and they go to a dark club, the Doom Room. The master of ceremonies is the ringmaster of a freak show with dead people. The MC injects blood into the dead, and they dance on a ring for the exalted audience, and Peggy sees her undead sister among them. This episode takes place in a post-World War III apocalyptic world, where there have been terrorist attacks with a weapon called Bliss. Bliss is a weapon in the form of a cloud that drops what appears to be some kind of chemical ashes that burns the people to death. So the world is devastated and angry young people rule the streets. Peggy's a good girl that's just trying to survive and works with her mom at the diner, but she's starting to run with a bad crowd. Peggy's mom is really protective, and quite honestly has some pretty badass moments throughout the episode. It was good to see Robert Englund again, of course playing another creepy character. This is a very loud, bold, and colorful episode. Just what you would expect from Toby Hooper. Episode 4, Jennifer, starring Carrie Ann Fleming and Steven Weber, was directed by Dario Argento. While parked in a remote spot, eating lunch with his partner, Detective Frank Spivey saves a disfigured woman named Jennifer from being killed by a deranged homeless man. He feels sorry for Jennifer and takes her from an insane asylum and brings her home. Frank becomes obsessed with Jennifer, feeling lust and attraction for her. When he realizes there's more to her, he moves with her to an isolated old cabin in the woods, with tragic consequences. This is a sexually explicit episode, and I mention that because I know some people might not be fans, but it is an important part of the story. Jennifer is a unique character. A young woman with a gorgeous body, disfigured face, and she can't speak. She seduces men, latches onto them, and gets them to protect and care for her. Frank is a cop with a dysfunctional family life, and after rescuing Jennifer from an apparent killer, he falls for her trap. I think Frank had the best intentions to help her, but had poor judgment and made bad decisions, even after Jennifer did horrific things. Carrie Ann Fleming did a great job portraying Jennifer, and even though this episode has some plot holes and logic problems, I still think it's a great episode. Episode 5, Chocolate. Starring Henry Thomas, Lucy Lorierne, and Matt Frewer, was directed by Mick Garris. In Chicago, Jamie works in the food lab of a company developing flavors. Jamie's divorced and is on a diet, but after eating a chocolate, he somehow becomes connected to a beautiful woman. He can see through her eyes, feels what she's feeling. Jamie falls in love with her until he witnesses her killing her lover. He travels to meet her with tragic consequences. I like the flashback storytelling technique of this episode. I always like getting a taste of the ending of a story and then watching the details unwind. I know Jamie had been through a lot with his divorce, but I thought his character was very wimpy and weird. His coworker was a bit over the top and annoying, but I always enjoy seeing Matt Frewer. I got a couple of chuckles when Jamie is connected to the woman and experiences what it is like for a woman having sex. Even though I have some nitpicks, I think this is a unique story and a really good episode. Episode 6, Homecoming. Starring John Tenney, Thea Gill, and Robert Picardo, was directed by Joe Dante. During the campaign for re-election of the President of the U.S., political consultant David Murch wishes live in a television talk show that a deceased soldier could come back from his grave to vote in the election as a marketing gimmick. Unfortunately, the president uses this in a speech, and soon the soldiers return, with the objective of voting in opposition. This is just a campy political satire with some over-the-top characters about zombie soldiers, and it's a fun watch. They definitely took jabs at both political parties as well as the news industry. The zombie makeup is mediocre, but they're not scary anyway. After all, they don't kill, they're just on a mission. Sure, it's got a few plot holes, but there's a good twist ending and it's worth a watch. Episode 7, Dear Woman. Starring Brian Benben and Cynthia Mora, was directed by John Landis. A harried, burned-out cop believes that a recent string of murders prove that the murderer might be a deer-like creature in the form of a beautiful woman right from a local Native America folklore legend. You can't deny this one has a unique story, and the comedic thriller style is perfect for John Landis. And anytime I see Brian Benben in a show, I enjoy his performance. He does a nice job as Dwight Faraday, and together with Officer Reed, we have a fun pair. Sure, this one has some issues, but that's expected with such a weird plot. Just suspend your disbelief and have fun with this one. Episode 8, Cigarette Burns. Starring Norman Reedus and Udo Kier, was directed by John Carpenter. With a torrid past that haunts him, a movie theater owner is hired to search for the only existing print of a film so notorious that its single screening caused the viewers to become homicidally insane. As a big fan of The Walking Dead, It was great to see Norman Reedus in a pre-Daryl Dixon role. His character, Kirby, is in a tough spot, desperate for money to repay his ex-father-in-law and on a mission to find the ultra-rare film. His search reveals more and more strange facts, and that's what keeps your interest in this episode all the way to the unexpected and twisted conclusion. Episode 9, Fair-Haired Child, starring Lori Petty, Lindsay Pulsifer, and William Samples, was directed by William Malone. Tara's a teen outcast in school and neglected by her mother at home. While riding her bike back home, she's drugged and brought to a deserted house by the pianist Anton and his wife, Judith. They lock her in the basement where she meets their son, Johnny, who's trying to commit suicide. Tara discovers the couple lost their son in a lake years earlier and have made a pact with a demon to bring him back in exchange for the sacrifice of 12 teenagers, and Tara is the last one. The beginning of this episode reminded me of the movie, Carrie. Tara is a shy, bullied teen with a dysfunctional home life. Despite the promising start, this ended up being one of my least favorite episodes. There were just too many dialogue issues, especially with Tara and Johnny's interactions, and Tara is way too emotional over Johnny considering she just met him. It's still worth a watch, just don't expect too much. Episode 10, Sick Girl, starring Angela Bettis and Aaron Brown, was directed by Lucky McKee. Shy etymologist Ida Teeter's obsessed by her pets, her collection of insects. She works with her friend Max. Ida receives an anonymous package from Brazil with an unclassified insect. The bug breaks free from the box. Meanwhile, Ida falls for the gorgeous Misty Falls, who's bitten and infected by the bug and moves to Ida's apartment. When Ida receives letters from her former Professor Wolf, explaining how the insect reproduces and transforms the animals it bites, Ida's apprehensive about Misty. Another quirky episode with a comedic tone that kept my interest. Ida is a really nerdy scientist. Her co-worker, Max, is brash and outspoken, and Misty is shy and innocent, so they're a great mix of characters. Her new pet bug really wreaks havoc, and the bug cam is a nice effect. Misty goes through a heck of a character arc, and the actress does a nice job portraying her. Not a scary episode, but a good watch. Episode 11, Pick Me Up, starring Michael Moriarty, Warren Cole, and Fairuza Balk, was directed by Larry Cohen. When a bus breaks down on a deserted road in the middle of a forest, passenger Stacia decides to walk the 20 kilometers to a motel. Another pair of bus travelers, Bertie and Danny, get a lift with Jim Wheeler, a truck driver who happens to be a crazed, psychotic killer. The paranoid Marie and her husband, terrified of what might be out there, stay on the bus with the driver awaiting help. Soon, Walker, a hitchhiker, comes to the bus. Can he help, or is he only more to fear? This is one of the gorier episodes, and it's also one of my favorites. Following the two psycho killers as they hunt down the bus passengers and ravage anybody else they come across really kept me engaged. I always liked Fairuza Balk, and Michael Moriarty is great as the creepy trucker. There's an unexpected twist at the end too, so don't skip this one. Episode 12, Haekel's Tale, starring Derek Cecil, Leela Savasta, and John Polito, was directed by John McNaughton. In the 1800s, a man seeks help from a necromancer to revive his wife. The woman advises him the process is dangerous. She says he should first listen to a man named Haekel's story to help him decide what he's asking. Ernst Haekel's a cocky medical student, fascinated with life, death, and resuscitation. In his search for true reanimation, he meets the necromancer Monteschino, who claims to have the ability to bring the dead back to life. Shortly after this meeting, Haekel learns his father's illness has become terminal and travels to see him. One night, while preparing to spend the night near a cemetery, an old man named Wolfram offers him shelter in his home, telling him it would be foolish to stay near the dead. Haekel accepts the invitation and meets Wolfram's young wife, Elise. He feels seduced by the beautiful young woman, but soon discovers the couple's got a dark secret. Normally, I'm not a fan of period pieces, but this story was told well, and the cinematography looks great. I'm a big zombie subgenre fan, and this one went in a direction I did not see coming. Overall, it's an engaging story with some interesting characters and has a good twist at the end. A definite recommendation. Episode 13, Imprint, starring Billy Drago and Yuki Kudo, was directed by Takashi Miike. In 19th century Japan, Christopher, an American journalist, has returned to search for Komomo, the missing love of his life who he abandoned years ago, though he promised to come back to her later. He arrives on a shadowy island, where he has an encounter with a deformed prostitute who tells him his beloved had passed away. He drinks with her and asks her to tell the story of her life. She tells a dark story about her life and the sad fate of Komomo. He learns of the physical and existential horror that befell her after he left. This is the episode that Showtime decided not to air due to graphic and disturbing content. Be warned that there are graphic scenes about rape, abortion, baby killing, and torture. It is not for the squeamish. With that said, it is a very interesting, detailed, and twisted story. The two female lead characters were portrayed wonderfully, but the male lead, Christopher, was way overacted at times. And I was really into this episode until something is revealed about one of the female characters in the third act, and it took a really odd twist that took me out of the episode a bit. This one made me squirm during the torture sequence, and it's my favorite of the season. It's a must-see if you can handle it. Overall, I really enjoyed Season 1. As with any anthology series, there was a wide variety of horror subgenres and directing styles. There's something for everyone here. Some episodes were good, and some were very good. None of them were bad. I definitely recommend this series, and keep an eye out for my review of Season 2 sometime in the future.